and welcome everybody to our session on Excel Beyond the Basics. Super excited to be talking with you today about this essential application that we have. I think it's actually just as commonly used as Outlook. I know personally I'm in Excel every day, and it's kind of a running joke that we'll just have JoLynn do a spreadsheet because that's typically what I do for anything. And we're going to talk about some of those essential tools here today that are going to be things that I feel we don't use often enough. Sometimes it's because we don't understand how beneficial they really are. There is a handout available if you want to go to the materials icon at the top of your menu. You can download the handout. The handout will be provided to you after the session as well. But if you want to use it to kind of follow along today, that would be great. It's a good reference tool for you to use after we get done with our session as well. So with that being said, let me go ahead and open up an Excel workbook. And the first topic that I want to talk to you about today is named ranges. If this is a feature you have never used before, may have heard of it, you definitely want to start taking advantage of this feature. Named ranges is a way that we can actually select a cell or a range of cells and give it an actual name. Normally we have the name box at the top left of your screen, where right now I happen to be on G5, and the name box always tells you the name of your active cell. But what we want to do today is find out this great feature called naming the cell, because of the fact that it's going to give you benefits like it's an absolute reference by default. So if you're familiar with using a $sign in your formulas to lock a cell down so that you can copy it, you don't have to do that if it's a named range. Another benefit of named ranges is going to be the fact that when you create a formula using a named range, the formula is easier to understand. Another benefit is, I could go on all day about just benefits of it, but another benefit is it's available in other worksheets. So I can use a named range anywhere within the workbook. And if I'm going to be creating a lot of formulas on the same range of cells, naming it makes it more efficient because I don't have to keep going back and selecting the ranges over and over again. So let me show you how to create a named range and how to use them in a formula. Starting out with the fact that I'm going to go to the cell G2. G2 has a 4%, which is referring to a commission rate. I'm simply going to click on the cell I want to name. So in this case, G2, I'm going to click in the name box and I'm going to physically type what I want to name this cell. So I'm going to name it commission rate. And the reason that I'm going to do this is I want it to be easier to use this in a formula. After I type the name, I just press enter. There are some rules available on your page 1 of your handout in regards to when you name a cell or a range of cells. When you name it, it can't have any spaces in the name. It's just like naming a table, naming a pivot table, using code, those types of things. We can't have any names in it. So if you're going to create a macro and different things, you also cannot use a cell reference. And when we talk about a worksheet, we have over 16,000 columns going across. It goes over to XFD. We have 1,048,576 rows going down. So we can't name a cell the same as a cell reference. So those are kind of the basic rules. Big one, no spaces. But now that I named this cell, how do you use it? What am I going to do with it? I'm going to go to cell G5 and I'm going to create a formula using that commission rate. I'm going to start, of course, with my equal. I'm going to say I want to take my total sales and multiply it by commission rate. As soon as I start typing CO, of course, I get that list of all the functions that begin with those letters. Notice that the function names have a circle with the FX to the left, but a named range is going to have the squares with the blue. I'm going to double click on commission rate. Notice that it automatically selects cell G2. I'm going to control enter because if I press enter, I'm going to move down. Control enter keeps me on the cell that I was actively on so that I don't have to go back up. So now that I'm on that cell, I can see when I read the formula makes more sense. Instead of having G2 with dollar signs to make it an absolute reference, it's easier to understand the formula. And because the named range is an absolute reference, I can copy it down with my fill handle, and every one of those formulas will be using commission rate. I'm going to do one more example. I'm going to go to cell G1. So on this worksheet, one more example. So on G1, I want to name this sales goal because I'm going to use it in a formula. So I'm on G1. I'm going to click again in the name box. I'm going to name it sales goal. I want to use it in a formula in column H. I'm going to do a formula that is going to use the function if. If is a very commonly used function. It's actually in the most common top 10, probably for me, top 5 of most commonly used functions. If you haven't used it before, the arguments for this really is we want to evaluate something, and whatever our criteria is that we're evaluating, it needs to have a true or a false answer. So what I'm going to do with this is I want to know if their total sales in column F is greater than or equal to the sales goal. If it's true, I want to have the word yes. If it's false, I want to have the word no. So what I'm going to do is equal I, the letter I. I'm currently on the if. I'm going to press my tab key because I'm on the function for if. Otherwise, I could double click on it. It's going to bring up your screen tip, giving you the syntax of the entire formula, breaking apart each argument. It is on the logical test right now. But one of the things that, if you haven't done this before, what I want you to think about is, do I need help with this? Am I sure what I'm supposed to do? If you're not sure, click FX. In your formula icons area underneath the ribbon, if you click the FX for insert function, it's going to open the function arguments window. I call it the helper window because it's going to help you build your formula, whatever your formula is. At the top left, it tells you the name of the function you're using. Your cursor is in the first field, or I should say argument, of the formula, and it gives you a description in the middle. If you still need additional help, you can actually go to help on this function at the bottom left, and it would take you to an internet website, Microsoft, and give you more information about doing this formula, give you examples and all kinds of information. But basically what I want to do is I want to take F5 and see if it is greater than or equal the sales goal. I'm going to click G1. When I click G1, it automatically adds the sales goal name because it's a named cell. I'm going to go down to the value if true. So what do I want it to do if their total sales is greater than or equal to the sales goal? I want it to say yes. I'm going to press tab and go into the value if false, and I'm going to have it say no. But one of the things that I really like about this helper window is it's automatically putting commas to separate my arguments. It's also putting quotes around text that is in the formula. So yes and no will both have quotes. I'm going to click OK or press enter, and I automatically can see that the first person's met their goal. So their total sales is greater than or equal to the sales goal, which is on G1. I can, of course, copy this down for the other employees. Because I'm using a named range, it's an absolute reference. So it will automatically copy it down for all of the other employees, which now I'm seeing there's only 2 people that did not qualify to meet their sales goal. But remember when I said named ranges can be used in other worksheets? Just so you could see an example of that, I'm going to go to the maps worksheet, and let's say that I want to create a formula using commission rate. I'm just going to click on a blank cell as an example. And let's say that I want to take 1,000 and multiply it by the commission rate. Doesn't matter what type of a formula I'm doing, I can utilize a named range from anywhere. So if I double click on commission rate, I'm going to do control enter. It automatically gives me the calculation of taking that percentage from the commission rate and multiplying it with that 1000. So it can be used anywhere within the workbook. And if I go to the name box and click on the drop down, you will see a list of your current named ranges. If I click commission rate, it's going to jump me back to the cell that actually includes the commission rate. Now I'm combining the details with this named range along with using some formulas. And I'm going to continue to do that. I want to go to the worksheet called, let me go to the worksheet orders. I'm going to go to the worksheet called orders. And I want to create a couple of formulas based on the extended price column. So I'm going to select I1. I'm going to select I1. I'm going to do Shift Control down arrow. That's a shortcut to select all the way down a specific column. It navigates you down and selects at the same time. So that was Shift Control down arrow. Now I'm going to go to the Formulas tab of the ribbon because we have this defined names group, which is where we can go to manage our named ranges, create new named ranges, and use named ranges. If I click Create from Selection, this will name this column of cells based on the header at the top, Extended Price. All I have to do is click OK. Now this column is named extended underscore price. It put the underscore because there was a space, and spaces aren't allowed in the name. But now I actually want to use it in a formula. So I'm going to go to K1. I'm going to create a sum, which I don't like to type, so I'm going to click the auto sum, and it wants to know what exactly do I want to get a sum of. I'm going to type EX. When I do that, I can see extended underscore price. I'm going to double click on it. It automatically selects all these cells related to that named range I just did. I'm going to control enter. Much easier to understand this formula because we know it's doing a sum of the extended prices. So now I have a sum, but I'm going to create another formula in L1. I'm going to create a subtotal formula. A subtotal is allowing us to do multiple types of functions. So I'm going to do equal SU. I'm going to double click on subtotal. It gives you a list of all the different functions a subtotal can actually do. So a subtotal can actually do max, min, average, sum, variables. It can do all kinds of different functions. I'm going to choose 9-sum. 9-sum, because I want this subtotal to give me the subtotal of the extended prices. So it puts this code into the formula of the number 9. That lets the computer know that I want to do a sum. So it's a hidden code to the computer. I'm going to put a comma to separate the arguments, and I'm going to use that extended price again. So once I EX, I can double click on extended price. I'm going to control enter, and I get the exact same answer. So why would I ever use a subtotal instead of just sum if I'm going to get the same thing? Well, when you're working with data that is columns and rows of information, whether it's 100 or it's 1,000,000 rows and it's 40 columns or 2 columns, it doesn't matter. You're most likely going to want to make some changes to that data. So one of the changes that you might want to do is filter or sort that data. If I'm selected within a range of cells, I can go to the Data tab of the ribbon and click on Filter. Filter is going to give me the filter drop-downs for each of the headings across the top of my data range, which is going to allow me to limit what I'm seeing. So like if I go to salesperson, I'm going to see a unique list of all my salespeople. If I don't want to see everybody, maybe I just want to see Laura Callahan and Robert King. I can select those names, click OK, and it automatically has filtered this list. I have blue row numbers on the left identifying the rows that matched my criteria. And on the status bar at the bottom left, I can see there's 289 records that match based on 1,464 total rows. But the formula for the subtotal has changed. It's now saying that there's only 188,000 plus. So what the subtotal does that is different than a regular sum is it gives you a formula that is specifically related to your filtered data. So every time you filter, the subtotal will change. So I could have a subtotal that's giving me the average. I could have it giving me the max, the min, etc. Different analysis can be done as you filter your data. So I love that subtotal feature. But I also love being able to sort and filter my data this way. So I'm going to clear the filter and I'll come back to this list here in just a few minutes. Instead, I want to do a couple more functions with you. I'm going to actually go to the worksheet called dates. I'm going to go to the worksheet called dates. And what I want to do here is create a formula by using date related formulas to calculate out the years of service that each of these employees have given to the organization. They have a data hire column that I'm going to utilize, but I'm also going to utilize today's date. But I'm going to do it with a formula. The formula is today. It's a today function. And just so you know, on the formulas tab of the ribbon, there's a function library group giving you the different categories of the different functions. And there's actually over 400 functions available. So you can see there's a lot of date related formulas. I'm going to be using two. I'm going to use a year and the function today. So on this F4, I'm going to say equal Y. I'm going to double click or tab on year because I want to get years of service as my answer. I want it to take today's date. So I'm going to type TO. I'm going to double click on today. I'm going to close that off with a right paren. And I have to give it another right paren. And the reason I do is because I'm using two functions. I'm using year, which needs its own left and right, but I'm using today, which needs its own left and right, which is required to create a formula. So I'm basically saying I want the year from today's date. I'm going to subtract it from the year. I'm going to do year again, but I want it from their data hire. So basically I'm saying take today's date, subtract their data hire. If I don't do year, it's going to give me days. I want years, so I'm using a function to do that for me. I'm going to close that off at the right paren. I'm going to control enter. And because it's a date formula, it gives you a date. But that's just formatting. So I can go to the home tab of the ribbon. In the number group, click on the drop down for date, and I can simply say general. So this first person has been there for 29 years. I can copy that formula down for the other employees because I used functions. I used the today as a answer in the formula. I'm going to double click on my fill handle. It will copy it all the way down for the other employees. So built into Excel are a lot of different types of functions. If functions, there's lookup functions, there's subtotal functions, there's date related, text related, etc. As a matter of fact, I want to actually fill out the extension for each of these employees, but I'm not going to do it with a formula. I'm going to look at G, column G, where it has the office location. And the office location has the building the employee works in, a code for the building, and the last four numbers is their phone extension. I want the computer to populate their phone extension in column H. What I need to do is give it the first one. Then the computer will follow my pattern. So I'm going to type in Erica Decker's phone extension is 2099 coming from column G. I'm going to control enter. Then I'm going to go to the data tab of the ribbon. And in the data tools group, I'm going to click this icon called flash fill. Once I click it, it follows my pattern and it will copy those last four digits from column G all the way down the list. So as long as you give it a correct pattern, it's going to look to the right, it's going to look to the left, and it sees that value of whatever it is. It can automatically populate it for you. Let me give you another example of that. In column I want to have the computer look at that office location column and put in the name of the building that each employee works in. So I'm basically separating this data. So I'm going to give it the first one. I'm going to type lab, L-A-B. I'm going to control enter. I'm going to click the flash fill again, and it's automatically going to populate all of the building names going all the way down. So we get lab, central, HQ, etc., going all the way down. Excel is a very smart program, but I don't think we let the computer do enough work. We manually do things a lot, and we don't have to. We can let the computer do all of that for us. One more example on this flash fill to show you the true power of what this can do. In column A, I'm going to go to A4. And what I want to populate is coming from columns B and C. You can see that there's the last name and first name, and the text is uppercase. As a matter of fact, I exported this out of an AS400, and for some reason it was set up to have their names capitalized. So I want them to be proper casing, and I want it to actually be first name space last name. I'm going to type it the way I want it. I'm going to put in Erica space Decker, capitalizing the first letter of both names. I'm going to control enter. I'm going to click flash fill from my data tab, and it automatically will follow my pattern. Now, hopefully, if you've never seen that, you're saying ooh or ah when you see this type of a feature. This is one of my favorite features that has come out in the past couple of years because it's so easy. And it's something that we all can use because a lot of times we're combining information together or we're extracting information from specific cells, where in the past, the only way we could do that is by using text to columns to separate or by using formulas. And formulas, yet they're good, I don't always need it to be a formula. As a matter of fact, if I were going to do a formula for this full name, I would have had to do two functions. I would have had to do proper along with concatenate, where I would say combine the first name space last name and then change the casing to be proper. This flash fill was much easier. So we don't have to work as hard as we used to. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the worksheet called references. I want to do just a couple of more functions with this before we kind of transition into another topic here. But what I want to do is a couple of different if functions. So earlier I did this if function saying if this cell is greater than or equal to the sales goal, I wanted to give me an answer of yes or no. But what I'm going to do next is let's say that I want to get a sum of the quarter one through quarter four numbers, but only if the number is greater than or equal to 5,000. So I only want to add the numbers together if it's greater than or equal to 5,000. All I have to do is click on the cell where I want the answer. I'm going to do equal SU. The function I'm going to use is sum if. I'm going to double click sum if. So this is similar to the if, but it's not going to bring back yes, no, true, false, or any of that. What it's going to do is analyze the range of cells that I select. I'm going to give it the criteria of being greater than or equal to 5,000. If it's true, if that matches, it's going to add those cells together. So if I wanted, I could type it in, or I could click FX. I'm going to click FX so that I can select what is the range of cells that I want to base the criteria on. The criteria is greater than equal 5,000. And the range I want to add together is the same range it's evaluating, the same range that it's evaluating. So when I do this, I don't have to put in a sum range. And by the way, I just clicked back in the range. Notice that it put quotes around the greater than equal 5,000. It sees it as text, which is kind of strange, but it does. It sees it as text. And I can even see the answer to the formula down here. If I click OK, I will get the answer. Basically, it added together B5 and E5. B5 and E5, and I can match up that answer down here on my status bar. So it only looks for the cells that have a number that is greater than 5,000. I can copy this formula down for the other employees, and each one of them will let me know what the sum is if the numbers going across each row is greater than equal 5,000. So a sum automatically will give you the total if it matches a criteria. Another common if is going to be an average if. These are things that I really use on a regular basis. So if I go to J5, I'm going to show you an average if. I'm going to do equal AV. I'm going to double click on average if. It is just like a sum if, where I'm going to use the same criteria, but instead of a sum, I want to get an average of the numbers that are greater than or equal to 5,000. So once again, I'm going to click FX so I don't have to do the commas, I don't have to do the quotes. It's my helper window. And the range I want to do is once again going to be B5 through E5. I'm going to say my criteria is going to be greater than equal 5,000. I don't have to do an average range because the range that I am having it evaluate is the one I want to get the average of. As soon as I click OK, it's going to give me the average of just the cells that have a number in that range that is greater than or equal to 5,000. So I can match that up down on my status bar with that average. Now I can, of course, copy that down for the other employees as well. So great way to be able to analyze data further than what we typically do. But there's another way we can grab information out of a range of cells that I want to mention here today. And that's going to be with functions that look up data. I'm going to go to the worksheet called Lookup. And I've got this range of cells for these employees. So I've got an employee ID, I've got their name, their region, their department, and their earnings. And I want to be able to find information about that employee and place it in the results at the top of this worksheet. Now, by the way, this results could be on a different sheet, different workbook, but I could be having it grab the information out of this range. One option for this is to use a formula with a V lookup. V stands for vertical, meaning that it's going to look vertically within a range of cells to find an answer of whatever we're looking up. Let me explain that a little bit more. I'm going to go to B6 and I want to find the name that goes with the employee ID number. The employee ID number is in A6. I'm going to use a VLOOKUP to look within this employee range of data to find that employee ID number and find the name that matches with it. So I'm on B6. I'm going to do equal the letter V. And I'm going to double click VLOOKUP. You can see the arguments going across the bottom. If you don't know for sure what all of that means or what it is, click FX. FX then will take you into that function arguments window where it will help you break apart the arguments. And if you need additional help, of course, help on this function is at the bottom left. So my lookup value is going to be A6. That's the cell I want it to find. The table array is a fancy way of saying range of cells. So where am I going to find this employee ID number and whatever I want the answer from? That's going to be A10 through E, all the way down to the bottom of this list, E49. So I wanted to look within this range to find the lookup value and the column index number. The column index number is going to be the column within my table array that has the answer I want. In this case, I'm looking up the name. So within that range of cells, the employee ID is the first column, name is 2. So my column index number is going to be 2. I'm going to click OK, and it automatically brings back Trevor Johnson because the employee ID number matches up with Trevor Johnson. So a VLOOKUP is a very common function to use, but I honestly don't use it anymore because we have a new function. And this new function called XLOOKUP for me has replaced VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. I no longer use either one of those because an HLOOKUP, we have to count down in rows. With the VLOOKUP, we count across in columns, and we're limited to the first column or first row of your range has to be what you're looking up. So in this case, we had to be looking up the employee ID number. With an XLOOKUP, it doesn't do that. It is more intelligent and it gives you additional features. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm just going to do the same formula looking up the department, but I'm going to use it with an XLOOKUP instead of V. I'm going to do equal X. I'm going to double click on XLOOKUP. If you look at the arguments that you're getting, it first wants to know what is my lookup value. I still want to look up A6 as an example. Comma, it wants to know what is my lookup array. What's the range of cells I want to look up? Where is it going to find my lookup value? I can simply select whatever column I'm looking up. I could be looking up their name. It doesn't have to be the first column within the range. We just select whatever column has those values. So if I select all the way down from A9 or A10 down through A49, that's where it's going to find the employee ID. Comma, all it wants to know is, well, where's the data going to come from that you want for your answer? In this case, I want the department. So I can select D10 down through D49. So that's where it's going to find the answer. So it's going to look across either from the left or from the right, and it's going to find the answer. If I control enter, it automatically will find the department related to that employee ID number. Every time you change the employee ID number, it's going to automatically find that employee. It's going to find their department, and it's going to be finding whatever their name is. Now, by the way, I have a drop-down menu on A6. That's coming from data validation. Another session we could do another day. But just so you can see, an XLOOKUP gives you that capability. But just so you can see, what if I decided that I want to actually find multiple pieces of information? I want to be able to find their name, their region, their department, and their earnings. I'm going to actually change this a little bit. As a matter of fact, let me copy this, and I'm just going to paste it over here. And I'm going to say I want to look up this employee ID number of E001, but I want to get the answer to all of the other criteria about that employee, not just one column. If I did this with a VLOOKUP, it would be a separate formula for the name, for the region, for the department, for the earnings. With an XLOOKUP, it's one formula. It will automatically populate the corresponding columns to the right. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to start on H5. I'm going to do equal X. I'm going to double click on my XLOOKUP because that's the function that I want to use. And then my lookup value is actually going to be G. Oops, sorry, my mouse is weird. Come on. There we go. G5, comma, what is the lookup range to find that employee ID? That's going to be A10 down through A49. Now, I probably would have named those ranges if I'm going to keep using them over and over again, but just so you can see. I'm going to put in a comma. Let me scroll back up here so you can see what it's doing. Now it wants to know, where is the answer going to come from? If I want more than one column of answers, I can select as many as I need. So I'm going to select B10 through E49, B10 through E49. But let me scroll back up here, sorry. But there's more to this XLOOKUP than what you've seen so far. I'm going to put in a comma. And the next argument is actually, do I want to have, oops, sorry, B49. I've got an extra comma in there somehow. Sorry about that. Let me just fix my formula if my mouse would cooperate here. Sorry about that. So I'm going to put a comma after my lookup array, and it wants to know now if not found. So if the employee ID isn't found, do I want to have an error message of some sort? I'm going to say, quote, employee ID not found. I have a built-in error code. And with an XLOOKUP, I can do another comma, and it wants to know, do I want an exact match of that employee ID number? If I'm doing random numbers that I'm looking up, I might want to say an exact match or the next smallest item, which is what a VLOOKUP can do with an approximate. But a VLOOKUP can't go larger. So I could say an exact match or larger as well. We have more capability with an XLOOKUP. Now, I do want an exact match, so I do want it to be a 0. So I'll put a 0 in. I'm going to control enter, and it automatically has now populated the name, the region, the department, and the earnings for the employee ID I was looking up, all in one formula. And the error code that I had put in, if I enter an invalid ID number, somebody that's not in the list, it's going to give me the error that I put into the XLOOKUP, employee ID not found. So I don't have to add another function to an VLOOKUP to say if error and tell it what I want to do. Now, Excel knew that this was an area that we needed some additional help with. So now it's all built in to the XLOOKUP. I no longer do a VLOOKUP or an HLOOKUP. I just use this. And just to give you an idea of if I wanted to do an approximate lookup with an X lookup, let's say that I want to find the discount percent based on a purchase amount. I can do equal X lookup. X lookup does both a V lookup and an H lookup, just so you know, it will do both. But if I want to do this with an X lookup, I can say, here's my lookup value, comma, where is it going to find that value? It's going to find it within this range, comma, where is the answer going to come from? It's going to come from this range. Do I want it to find the next highest number or the next lowest number? I could do if not found, I could say not valid or whatever I want to say, comma, the match type. Do I want it to find the next highest number or the next lowest number? I'm going to say exact match or next largest number. I'm going to control enter. It found 18% for this 5,500 because 5,500 wasn't in this list. 5,000 is here, but I told it to go to the next highest. Next highest is actually the 7,500 for the 18%. A VLOOKUP couldn't do that. I love the XLOOKUP. If this isn't something that you've used in the past, highly recommend it. And our last topic that I want to cover with you here in our session today, well, let me do two things. One is I want to go to this MAPS worksheet. We have the capability of doing charts. And you may have already done a chart in the past where, just a quick example of a chart, if I want to select a range of cells and create a chart based on that range, you can always go to the Insert tab of the ribbon. You can choose the chart type directly from there. Or you can go to the Quick Analysis at the bottom right. Every time you get an icon that appears, you should click on it because it's there to help you. If I click on this quick analysis, Microsoft assumes when you select cells, you either want to do some formatting, like your conditional formatting, or you want to create a chart, or you want to do some totals, whether it's sum, average, etc. You want to create a table or some spark lines. I want to create a chart. So this is another way to create a chart. Of course, I can move my chart wherever I want. I can resize it. I can use my tools up on my ribbon. I've got these different chart styles. I can go to my quick layouts to give different elements to add to my chart, etc. That you may have already done. But what a lot of people aren't understanding that's a great feature built into Excel is actually maps. We have the capability of doing a map with geographical data. So if I select A1 through C11, based on this range of states and visitor counts, I could go to the Insert tab, I can go to Maps and do this filled map. If it's the first time you're doing it, you have to enable it. But once you enable it, it automatically is going to create a geographical map. Whether it's a world map or it's a USA map, a Canada map, whatever it is that you need, it will automatically give you a map. So this is actually a pretty cool feature. You don't get as many bells and whistles with the elements that are included with a map, but there are a few different quick layouts that you can use. You have different styles that you can be utilizing. So depending on how you want it to look. But when you go to the add chart elements, there's a chart title, there's data labels, and there's legend. There isn't as many choices when it comes to this type of a map. But I think it's actually a pretty cool feature if you use geographical data. Last thing about geographical data that I want to mention, not sure if you understood this or know about this feature, but on the data tab, we have this data types group. If I select these states, I can get additional data graphics based on this information. By going to the data types, I can click on the drop down, choose geography, and it connects these states or countries or cities or counties, whatever, to the internet, where I can then populate information in the next available column related to each state. I can click this icon, add column. Look at all this geographical information I can use. I could have it populate the largest city based on that state. I could have it populate the area, the description, the major city, the leaders, etc., the population. Whatever information I need, it can automatically populate it. So it goes to the next column and it just can keep adding the geographical information related to that specific area. So it's amazing what is built in to Excel. Excel is one of these applications that does a lot more than add, subtract, multiply, and divide. although it can do those, expand your usage. And the last thing, I'm going to go back to the orders worksheet. We had this range of data that I turned the filters on, and I created a couple of formulas from it. But usually I need to take this a lot further. If I scroll down on this list, I can't see the headings anymore. So I would want to freeze panes. I also would want to format this data. I may want to create some formulas. I don't do all of that individually. What I do is turn it into a table. So the table can provide me with all of the details of working with this group of data. I'm going to turn the filters off just so that you can see the table will automatically give us filters. So I'm just going to go to the Insert tab of the ribbon. I'm going to click on the icon Table from the left-hand side. It puts marching dashes around the range of my cells. It has my table has headers. I'm just going to click OK. It automatically has this range of data inside a managed area called a table. It gives you the drop downs for the filters automatically, which of course gives you sorting capabilities. If I scroll down on this list, it freezes the top row. It's going to change it from being A, B, C, D to being the names of the actual columns. And we have a new tab on the ribbon called Table Design, where it's going to give you table styles, this gallery of choices for different styles that you can apply. The style that I'm using has every other row a different shaded color. That's called banded rows. That's available in this on the ribbon on this table style options. If I uncheck banded rows, it takes it away. Maybe I want banded columns where it's going to emphasize every other column within your list. Otherwise, banded rows is a great choice, easier to read the information. But it also has emphasis on the first column and or the last column. Whatever you check, it applies. Click it again to take it back off. And one more thing about tables is it has this feature called total row. If I click total row, it adds a new row to the bottom of your list called total, and it's automatically giving you a subtotal in the last column. Every cell in the total row can have a different calculation. By default, it looks at the last column and assumes you want to add those numbers together, which maybe I do. But what if I want to get an average of the quantity? I could go to the quantity column, click on the down arrow for the total row, and choose average. Maybe I want to get a count of how many total country or how many total rows we have. I could go to a column that has text and I could use the count option where it's going to count how many records we have. So you could use different types of formulas depending on the column of data that you have. The total row gives you the capability of having that. So for me, a table is essential, and a table becomes a named range. So if I go to the Table Design tab, in the table name, I can give it a name, and I'm going to call this Company Orders. It is now a named range. Just like the other named ranges that we had previously done, if I go to the name box, here's a list of all the named ranges, and it includes the name of this table, Company Orders. Notice that it also has this visitor data. If I click visitor data, it takes me back to the table coming from the maps worksheet. This is a named range because it's a table. Now, how do I know it's a table? When I'm on any of the cells within this range, I have the Table Design tab on the ribbon, so I know it's a table. I could have manually added the filters. I could have manually formatted it, but I won't because I don't want to have to do that extra work. I let the computer do it for me.